this is an infinitely better foundation to start with than Man of Steel. It just feels like in that movie, you had, Warner Brothers, Zack Snyder, everyone else who was involved come in and like, well, we're going to approach Superman this way, where we're not going to have him be a kind and hopeful character. He's going to be mopey. He's not going to be very good at saving people. Matter of fact, he's going to kill more people than actually save any, right? And James Gunn, like, he just consistently strikes me as someone who, like, looks at all these characters, has a profound understanding of all of them, and says, we're going to showcase that in our adaptations. We're going to lean to the things that make these characters work. And with these characters, I feel like that's on full display. This, yes, it's similar to things like Guardians. Yes, it's similar to things like the Suicide Squad. But everyone is, at least so far, at the very least, interesting. In a lot of cases, very endearing. And I feel invested in this world. I want to continue to follow these characters and what they're going through and see them come out on top. Unlike in something like Man of Steel, where I just wish, like, this Superman can get the hell out of here. All right? Drop a skyscraper on him. All right? Instead of all these innocent people. So, in terms of a foundation, in terms of a step forward, this show does all that. It is a strong foundation, and it's a very positive, very good step forward, in my opinion, to what I hope will be a wonderful take on these characters that I think many of us love. Let's go ahead and move on to my review for Creature Commandos. This is a very special show because this is the first entry to James Gunn's and Peter Safran's DC cinematic universe. Like, yes, we're getting, the first live action film in that universe next year with James Gunn's Superman, which I'm very excited for. And I'm hoping that movie is great, obviously. But this is technically the start of the DCU. And listen, I was already really excited for the show. As you guys know, I'm a pretty big fan of DC animation in general. I grew up on the DC animated universe all the way back in the day in the 90s, starting with Batman the Animated Series, going forward with stuff like Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, Static Shock, even the Zeta Project, not the Zeta Project, right? But, and then of course all the, DC animated movies that they did, like Mask of the Phantasm and, Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. Oh, I love that movie so much. And even like other projects too over the years, like DC and Warner Brothers, they have a lot of great DC animation, a lot of wonderful adaptations. Not everything is wonderful, believe me. I think like this past decade, where they focused a lot on the New 52 stuff, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. There were a few exceptions, of course. Really like Flashpoint. That was really fun. I thought that was great. A number of the Suicide Squad stuff I thought was pretty fun. But yeah, I didn't really care for some of those movies. Those of which I saw. Been loving My Adventures of Superman. That's been fantastic. Those first 2 seasons, highly recommend it. Batman Cape Crusader, which I was really excited for. I didn't care for that, but a lot of people like that too. So, fair enough. So, again, DC, Warner Bros., they have a rich history with adapting a lot of these characters. And it was very interesting that James Gunn, Peter Safran, they wanted to start with like an animated show as an entry point, to this. I think kind of just give you, a taste for what you can expect. Dealing with characters that you would think James Gunn would be really enthused about, in terms of telling their stories. Like this show is very much a spiritual successor to the Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker. And I think that's a great thing. It's like, listen, if you're a fan of James Gunn, a lot of his material, whether it be, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad, some of his horror stuff, like Slither, obviously, and, and of course, other, DC stuff like, Peacemaker, of course, then I do feel like this show is going to be for you, because James Gunn has proven that he is just really good at making us care about characters we ordinarily wouldn't give a shit about, right? He did that with Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, like I remember when they announced that, I was like, who the hell are the Guardians of the Galaxy? I think most of us were all saying that, aside from, you know, really super hardcore Marvel fan. Like, I kind of consider myself one, but even then, I was kind of unfamiliar with a lot of the cosmic aspects, and I knew about Rocket Raccoon and a talking tree. That's it. And then that first movie came out and blew all our minds. Was wonderful. Guardians 2 was a little mixed on, obviously. Guardians 3, fucking loved it. And then, of course, this was good. But my point is, he makes us care for all these Z-list characters, D-list characters, you know, what have you. He gives them so much depth, puts them through the ringer, you know, provides them, in some cases, with really dark and captivating stories. And I think for the most part, his execution is pretty good. And that's what's on full display here. Like, as I said, this is a spiritual successor to the Suicide Squad. It's also a sequel, by the way. And so James Gunn's pretty much said, yeah, the DCEU, most of that's not canon, except my stuff. And so the Suicide Squad, the broad strokes of that, because they reference that is canon and everything. Peacemaker's canon and everything. So just going forward, because this takes place about 2 years after the events of that original movie and Project Starfish, everything that happened, and, you know, in that country that, you know, the Suicide Squad, you know, went to. And Corto Maltese, I believe, I think it was Corto Maltese, which is from the comics, which is so fun. But you follow Rick Flag Sr., played by Frank Grillo, and this is the father of Rick Flag, who died during the events of the Suicide Squad. He's called to be the commander of Task Force M, which, you know, is very similar to Task Force S, the Suicide Squad, and where he has to wrangle all of these monsters, you know. Yeah, I mean, you kind of have like Frankenstein's bride, you know, you have characters like Dr. Phosphorus, you know, who's basically kind of like a radioactive man. You have, of course, Weasel, who returns. You have like some other like really cool character like G.I. Robot, who is this World War II robot that just wants to kill Nazis all the time. You have this character named Mina, who is pretty much the female version of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and many other characters, which I'll get in the details about. And they're sent on this mission to this fictional country. I think it's called Polkistan, where Cersei, who is, you know, an Amazonian, who is basically amassed this army to gain power in this region. Basically, it's like an army of shitty incels who are all upset that men can't go to Themyscira. And she's like, hey, if you work for me and you help me take over this country and use its resources, we could take over Themyscira. And the Mandalorian is like, we can't have that. We can't have a rogue, goddamn crazy sorceress messing with all this stuff. Rick Flag, take all these delinquents, all these monsters, get over there and deal with her, right? And they're set up there at the government and things. They have to deal with the, you know, the population. And that's pretty much the start of this particular story. And again, it's very similar to the Suicide Squad. But much like the Suicide Squad, the thing that is going to invest you outside of the terrific animation and action sequences and just the profound amount of heart that this show displays in the first 2 episodes are these characters. I really fell in love with many of them. And some of them we haven't really even touched the surface with. Like, we really only get into the backstories of Rick Flag Sr., and especially the bride, who is played by Indira Varma, who is probably best known for a lot of people for playing like her role. She was the Oberyn Martell's wife, or paramour in Game of Thrones. She's popped up in several other things recently. But we really get into the details with them. But in terms of just, like, really describing these characters, like, I love how, because initially I'm thinking, well, Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr., he's just going to be a carbon copy of, you know, Rick Flag, like from, you know, the past 2 films. He's really not. He's a guy that is, yes, he's much older, but he doesn't have the enthusiasm. He doesn't have really kind of the loyalty to the United States government that his son did. Like, his son aspired to make the country and the world safer. Rick Flag Sr. is not really that. He's kind of a broken man. and he wears that on his sleeves, or lack thereof, his muscular arms. And he's a bit of a rogue. He's a bit of a rogue with, I would say, a heart of gold. And Frank Grillo, who, funny enough, I just recently saw in Werewolves, which, you know, he played I think a really undeveloped character. Here, I think his performance so far and what they give for him to do is really great. I mean, you have some great dramatic moments, some really heartfelt moments that he has with a number of the members of Task Force M. You know, he's not just there to like, you know, all right, do your goddamn job, I'm gonna hurt you. It's like he actually likes interacting with them. He doesn't see them as monsters, as freaks. And I thought that was like really cool. He's very different in that way from like the Rick Flag we see in like 2016 Suicide Squad. He's more worldly. He's more worldly. He's experienced a lot, and he's very open. And I did not expect that with his character. And he just kind of carries this. He carries this guilt. He carries this sadness. Like his marriage, you know, fell apart. I mean, they acknowledged the death of his son, and that has really affected him, and he wasn't able to say goodbye to him in any way, you know, and I really like that with his character. He also has some really fun comedic moments, not just with Task Force M, but the princess of this country, Polkistan, you know, who is just lusting after him. Oh, by the way, in terms of we'll get more to the animation aesthetic, everyone in this show, besides Weasel, is sexy. Listen, if you have an appreciation for the female form or the male form, well, congratulations. Creature Commandos has something for you. You're going to see a lot of nice, I mean, you got curves for days, boobs and butts, and just abs and everything, you know, big dicks, just like, you know, just behind underwear. It's like, God damn. Everyone looks hot in this show. It's like it's very, very pleasing to the eye. But they create some great sequences with Frank Grillo's Rick Flag. I thought were super fun. In terms of the Creature Commandos themselves, like the one that gets the most focus is Indira Varma's character of the Bride. This is very much the Bride of Frankenstein. And, you know, at first when we're introduced to her, she's a little sarcastic. She's a bit of a hard ass. You know, she definitely has a chip on her shoulder. And you're like, okay, well, why? Is it because you're just in prison? They really go into her backstory in the second episode. And it is pretty much James Gunn's take on the classic 1935 film Bride of Frankenstein, where the Frankenstein's monster, Eric Frankenstein, in this case, voiced by David Harbour, who does a phenomenal job so far. He wants a bride. He wants a wife. He wants to fall in love with someone. And Dr. Victor Frankenstein does just that. And, you know, much like in the original 35 film, she has a bit of a negative reaction to first seeing, her would-be husband, or would-be boyfriend, right? Suitor, paramour. And you just kind of see in that second episode, like Victor Frankenstein acclimating her to this world, because she has the mind of a child. You know, they really go into that layer. You know, she's not just like killed instantly, you know, 5 minutes, you know, after she's born, like in the second film. It's like here they go into it, and they have some really wonderful, cute, adorable moments, and then it gets weird, and then it gets extremely dark and very surprising. And I want to go into more details about that, but all I'll say is the trio of Dr. Victor Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, and Eric Frankenstein, the monster, that is a fucked up family dynamic, and I found it very, very fascinating. Loved episode 2 and what they do with her. But then, of course, you have other characters who we're getting little bits and pieces of. Not as much depth yet, because I feel like we're going to have an episode to like, okay, now we're going to really focus on this person, what their whole backstory is, what they're all about. And it's like, you know, first, hey, look how funny they are. But then it's like, oh, and here's the darkness, here's the tragedy behind all of them that made them who they are. One of those characters we're introduced to, we have Sean Gunn, who does play 2 characters. He returns as Weasel, who is just as gross and weird as he is in the Suicide Squad film. I feel like we're going to learn more about Weasel, though, in just a bit. He's not just a monster. I think there's going to be more to him. Probably have a more wholesome backstory. Obviously, like the thing we know best about him, which they repeat, it's like he's known for eating like 24 children, which maybe he didn't, and we're going to find out. But he also voices G.I. Robot, who is a military android robot whose sole purpose was to kill Nazis during World War II. And he is constantly excited about that. Like, that's the one thing. Like, no matter what's going on, like, after, like, Rick Flags explain, like, the mission, this is what we got to do, this is what we're going to do here. And, like, G.I. Robot will raise his hand. He's like, yes, G.I. Robot. He's like, will there be any Nazis to kill? And, like, there's no Nazis here. He'll go, oh. Every time it happens is great. Or he'll be talking with a character who I love, Nina, Gilgal as I call her, the Creature in the Black Lagoon lady, and they'll be overlooking this like beautiful, just view and like seeing this gorgeous city and this garden. She's like, "Oh, isn't this wonderful, G.I. Robot?" And he's like, "This is very nice, but would make it better is if it was just filled to the brim with the bodies of dead Nazis that I have killed." And she's like, "You know what? If there was anyone that I could kill Nazis with, it would be you, G.I. Robot." And she does a little fist bump, and he's like, "That's the sweetest thing you ever said to me." Like, stuff like that. And so I'm already like, I love this guy. And that Nazi joke, consistent joke, hilarious. But, I imagine we're going to get to know more about him very soon. But he's great. Love him so much. Alan Tudyk, of course, is in this, who's been a bunch of James Gunn stuff before, a bunch of DC stuff for years now at this point. He is voicing like several characters in this series, some which we haven't seen yet. Primarily, he's the voice of Dr. Phosphorus, who is just kind of permanently radioactive. He actually reminded me of Blight, Derek Powers from Batman Beyond. He kind of has the same power set and everything. They got a great thing where he constantly is... He's like saying something that maybe is sarcastic, but you can't fucking tell because his face is just a skull. And he's like, "Are you being sarcastic?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm smiling, but you wouldn't be able to tell, but I'm smiling." Or it's like if something sad happens and they look at him and it says that permanent skull grin. It's like, "Why are you looking that way?" He's like, I'm frowning right now. You can't tell, but I'm frowning. And he has a wonderful action sequence in the first episode that like really stood out. I mean, it was beautiful, especially what they use of his powers and stuff. And we don't know a lot about him yet, other than just kind of being very funny and comedic. But I really liked his interactions, especially with Rick Flag. With Rick Flag, I love his brief interaction with Weasel in episode 2. Some great stuff with him. But I expect we'll like really know more about him very, very soon. My favorite character so far, because I just think she's so adorable, and that is Zoe Chow as Nina Mazursky. And she's this amphibious scientist. She's pretty much the Gilgal. The Gill Girl. She's a female version of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and she just has this personality that you can't help but resist, that she is incredibly endearing. I guess you can say she's similar to someone like Ratcatcher 2 from the Suicide Squad. Like, she tries to be positive despite how difficult their situation obviously is, but she's really there for her teammates and wants to support them. You know what she reminded me of? Like, I mentioned this during my review commentary. Like, her whole personality is Tali Zora Voss Normandy from the Mass Effect series. Now, if you guys don't know, Tali Zora Voss Normandy is my video game girlfriend. I love her, Chad. She's a great personality. She's very smart. She's, there for her friends constantly. She's very supportive of Shepard, and she's got hips and curves for days, and she most certainly does, because everyone is sexy in the show, including the Gill Girl. And she has to be, like, in this, like, aquatic suit with this fishbowl helmet on, and she follows the bride on her in her episode 2, or trying to help her cope with her tragic past, to say the least. But anytime she has a line, it's either adorable, it's really funny, but there's also, again, there is this, even with all the characters I mentioned and how funny they are, there is this sadness, this undercurrent of sadness to all of them. And like we've explored that a little bit with Rick Flag Sr. We definitely explored that with the bride, and I imagine we get that with all these characters, including her. But she was great in the show so far. And then the other character, I guess technically the last character I would mention right now, is David Harper as Eric Frankenstein, and who is the supposed would-be husband, really turned stalker of the bride, who does something pretty despicable in the past that the bride is very angry about. And it's a really interesting take on Frankenstein. I guess he's really more closer to Mary Shelley's take on the character, who is, very articulate. He can speak extremely well, but he's a quick thinker, and he has just these machinations that are very nefarious, at least initially. And it was definitely a more refreshing take on Frankenstein's monster that I really likes. One that we don't often see all that much. A lot of the times there's a, you often feel sympathy for the creature. And I guess, again, you do. There's, again, that undercurrent sadness is also in him as well. He just does some foul shit in the show. But he's great. outside the characters in the story so far. And again, this is not very episodic. Like episode 1, it like at the end of that, we go immediately in episode 2 and just like seconds have passed. And I expect the way episode 2 ends is going to be the same for episode 3, which is very cool. But outside of that, in terms of technical aspect, the animation of the show is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's 2D. Its color palette is wonderful. Like this whole sequence between Rick Flag, this fight scene, I'll spoil a little bit. Rick Flag fights Dr. Phosphorus at one point, and it's fucking great. Just all the action and how that's all choreographed. In episode 2, we get like a very kind of gothic look where we explore Dr. Frankenstein's castle, if you will. And just the use of colors and the purples and the reds and the black. I loved it. Especially when Cersei comes in with all of her power set and everything. It's great. And just all the aesthetics and the tones, I think, are just meshing together very well. Like what James Gunn, I think, is consistently most of the time has done pretty well as a filmmaker and as a writer is he's able to balance this darkness with these moments of levity. And it's like, yes, the show is very funny, but it's not always going to be a comedy. It's going to provide moments of levity when it feels necessary. Because you're going to have a lot of serious stuff in this. A lot of disturbing stuff, body horror, and just, again, really messed up family dynamics that I did not expect and was quite shocked by, that I found really interesting. It just, so far, these first 2 episodes have left a really good impression on me. And, and before I forget, with these 2 episodes, this is an infinitely better foundation to start with than Man of Steel. It just feels like in that movie, you had, Warner Brothers, Zack Snyder, everyone else who was involved come in and like, well, we're going to approach Superman this way, where we're not going to have him be a kind and hopeful character. He's going to be mopey. He's not going to be very good at saving people. Matter of fact, he's going to kill more people than actually save any, right? And James Gunn, like, he just consistently strikes me as someone who, like, looks at all these characters, has a profound understanding of all of them, and says, we're going to showcase that in our adaptations. We're going to lean to the things that make these characters work. And with these characters, I feel like that's on full display. This, yes, it's similar to things like Guardians. Yes, it's similar to things like the Suicide Squad. But everyone is, at least so far, at the very least, interesting. In a lot of cases, very endearing. And I feel invested in this world. I want to continue to follow these characters and what they're going through and see them come out on top. Unlike in something like Man of Steel, where I just wish, like, this Superman can get the hell out of here. All right? Drop a skyscraper on him. All right? Instead of all these innocent people. So, in terms of a foundation, in terms of a step forward, this show does all that. It is a strong foundation, and it's a very positive, very good step forward, in my opinion, to what I hope will be a wonderful take on these characters that I think many of us love. Many of these DC characters. It makes me excited. It makes me even more excited and confident in Superman and some of these other upcoming projects like Green Lantern. It makes me hope for the best. So, yeah, really enjoyed Creature Commandos, at least these first 2 episodes. I'm going to keep watching it. I'm going to keep doing audio review commentaries for it. I think I'll do another review probably once, maybe in the middle of the season, and certainly once it finishes up. But yeah, I recommended it. I recommend it. I think it's great. What about you guys? Let me know. What did you like Creature Commandos? Are you a fan of James Gunn's previous works, like Guardians or the Suicide Squad, or some of his horror stuff? There's a lot of horror in this series. Stuff like Slither, I think is quite fun. So let me know.
5 minutes later.
What about you, Chad? What do you think about Creature Commandos? At least, so far after these first 2 episodes. I mean, we still got, I think, 6 more? I think it's like an 8-episode series, maybe 9. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see what you guys are saying. 27 children. G.I. Robot's my favorite. G.I. Robot is great. Every time he's like, can I kill Nazis? Like, there's no Nazis here. He's like, oh. His backstory is next. Oh, is it? Oh, okay, tomorrow's episode. So we're going to get a World War II episode. I'm very, because we also been hearing about Sergeant Rock. Apparently they're going to be doing like a film adaptation of that. So I want to see what a James Gunn World War II story is going to be. And if we're going to get a little taste of that in the third episode, I can't wait. I would love to see his idea of a World War II story. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Very pulpy. Very, very pulpy. So it's great. That's tomorrow's episode. Fantastic. Nevermore. I hope Creature Commandos is a success. I think so far it's been pretty good. I think it's really good. 2 steps forward in a positive direction. Creature Commandos versus Justice League. Yeah, I mean, based on everything we see in these first 2 episodes, Justice League Dark, Constantine, Zatanna, Etrigan the Demon, Deadman, all those characters would easily fit in this world. They could show up in this series and be like, yeah, it makes sense that they're here. Yeah, aesthetically, it just matches. So I'm game. Give it to me. Inject into my veins, baby. Yeah, from the 2 episodes released so far, I was really impressed. Yeah, nice. Glad you like it too, Tommy. Edward says, I'm loving it so far. Me too, man. Me too. A lot of people that saw the next few episodes thought the show gets better every episode. So that's great. That's positive. Because I think episode 2 is even better than episode 1. And episode 1 was already super fun. Daniel Craig, Sergeant Rock. Wow, that's very interesting casting. I'm all for it. Yeah, he wants to do it. Cool. I would love to see, World War II James Gunn story. Let's fucking go. Let's do it. Or get someone, has maybe the same sensibilities to execute his vision. I'm all about that. I think the princess is us too. Princess Alana. It's the thing is, I should have mentioned her character. I'll go back. I think the thing that I like about her character is because you think she's going to be just stuck up and just, a rich, smug asshole. And she's not. She's super nice and endearing and kind to everybody, especially Rick Flag. Especially Rick Flag. And she's also a little too hot. There's a great gag. I don't want to say what it is, but there's a great gag of her family and her family history that I was like, oh. That's a little weird. I really liked her, but yeah, I while watching those episodes, I agree, Just Ty. There's I don't know about you. It's that thing where maybe it's the Northeastern to me. It's you're too goddamn nice. What's your deal? But it was nice. I think Clayface may either be the... Oh, yeah. What if it is Clayface? Because they did say Clayface is in the show. Be the Prince of the Guard that drove the Creature Commandos. True. Because we do know Clayface. They have said Clayface is in this series. And so... that is going to be really interesting. All I'll say is... that's... especially after what happens in an episode. I was like, oh, wow. All I'll say is Clayface is committed. That's all I'm going to say. Clayface is extremely committed to his, disguise is all I'll say. And the acting, if you will. Yeah, that'll be all I'll say, that's a really fucked up version of Clayface. Okay. If they do what I think they're going to do. Great. But yeah, I really like the chat. I really like it. I highly recommend it. It just makes me so excited. I think, oh God, if we can get what kind of Marvel is able to capture with the first 3 phases of the MCU. And I'm not saying I want exactly the MCU. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying in terms of level of success, to get a DC, a sense of consistency with we're going to release Guardians of the Galaxy, and here's Winter Soldier, and here's Civil War, and here's, Avengers Infinity War, and Endgame, and Thor Ragnarok, and shit like that. We can get that for all these DC movies and have that be wow, right? And then still have what Matt Reeves is doing with his Batman crime universe, right? With stuff like The Penguin, The Batman Part 2, and what I expect are going to be these other, shows and things. So it'll be, hopefully we'll be in a new era, renaissance, the DC renaissance of films and animation. I would like that. I'd very much like that. And I wouldn't be surprised too. That'd be the last thing I'll say, even though I feel like Creature Commandos is great and I want more animated projects as well. Give me another season, right? If it calls for it, of course. But if they were to do maybe Marvel, again, call them Marvel, what they do with X-Men 97, and they kind of bring back some of these older DC animated shows and do Batman or Batman Beyond or Superman, Static Shock, and now it's years later, I think that'd be really interesting. But, there's some things you wouldn't be able to recapture, obviously, with the very tragic passing of Kevin Conroy's Batman, who's such an integral part to that Batman. There's that. But, I don't know. It's something to consider, I think. But overall, really love Creature Commandos.